How's it going out there, my mandolin playing friend? In today's 10-minute challenge, we're going to be looking at a cool exercise that I grew up calling the walking bassline exercise, but we're just calling this one the walking arpeggio exercise because that's what we're doing. We're taking arpeggio notes or chord tones and using them to walk quarter note lines over the chord changes to a standard tune. Today we just happen to be using the chord changes to Whiskey Before Breakfast. Before we dive into the lesson today, my name's Griffin, and if this is your first time to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. We release new content weekly on Mandolin Secrets, and you don't want to miss out. Also, hit that bell notification button while you're down there to get updates whenever we do release a new lesson on Mandolin Secrets. If you're interested in PDFs of the tablature and sheet music to kind of aid your educational process, we keep all of those inside of Mandolin Secrets Academy. There's a link below in the description, so definitely go check that out if you're interested in that as well. So why is it important for us to know how to do this crazy walking arpeggios exercise? Well, in my opinion, it's really important to have a working knowledge of the notes that are contained within the chord changes to tunes that you're going to be improvising solos over. Most modern players choose to use triad tones, so the chord tones themselves, as the basis for improvisations, as opposed to just randomly playing notes in the scale. Makes sense, right? If you're playing over top of a D major chord that, say, your guitar player is playing, it would make sense to use the notes that are contained within a D major chord in order to make your own improvised solo, because theoretically they'll work together, right? So some of you out there may be wondering, what is an arpeggio? What is a triad? What is a scale? What is this guy talking about? If you don't have a great working knowledge of this, I would suggest backing up and maybe doing a little bit of research on basic music theory. My quick explanation for what a triad is, though, in each major scale, we can line out all of the 7 notes that are contained within that scale. So for today's example, we're going to be using D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. Those are the notes that are in the D major scale. Each one of those notes can have a triad built on top of it by simply skipping notes in the scale. So a D major chord consists of D, skip E to F sharp, skip G to A. So it's D, F sharp, and A. Those are the notes that are contained within a D major chord. And that's how you create triads for all of the other chords in any key, really, as well. So that's kind of my quick introduction to triads and chord tones if you're not familiar with it. So let's back up a minute and talk more specifically about this exercise in front of us. If you're looking at the PDF in front of you, I've actually written out the triad notes in the first position of the mandolin that we're going to be using here today for all of the chord changes in the tune Whiskey Before Breakfast. And then as you look on to the next page, I've got the exercise written out where I use those arpeggio tones to make what I would call walking arpeggio lines in quarter notes over the chord changes to Whiskey Before Breakfast. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning, I used to call this the walking bassline solo, and that's because doing this, using chord tones to walk quarter notes over top of the chord changes to a tune, is a very similar approach to what a jazz bassist does underneath of all jazz tunes. They're improvising the whole time, but they're using quarter notes, whereas most of us, when we're improvising, think about 8th notes or 16th notes, right? So this is a really great way to kind of dip your toe into the water of improvisation using a very simple concept like triads. One last thing I want to mention before we dive into this exercise is that you should be paying attention to the staff notation here. Now, even if you don't read staff notation, just look at the shapes that the notes make over the span of 2 or 4 bars. You can kind of see that they make these little arches or valleys, right? I like to think about making these shapes when I use triad tones in this way, because when you start to fill in the gaps between these quarter notes and make it more of an 8th note solo, you get this really awesome kind of long form arc and shape to the tune. And our ears really love when we take a solo and move it from kind of a low harmonic area to a high harmonic area, or vice versa. It's great to have variation, and this is a great way to create it in a controlled environment. So that's enough talk about this exercise for now. Let's go ahead and dive into playing it. I'm going to set my metronome over here to 80 beats per minute, so feel free to grab that PDF, the second page, and we're going to go ahead and follow along with this exercise. All right, metronome is set at 80 beats per minute, and we're looking at the walking arpeggios exercise here. I'm going to give us a 4 count. Oh, 1, 2, ready, go. So there you have it, my friend. I know that seems like a really simple exercise, but let's go back and recap on why this one is important. So if you're looking at the PDF in front of you, let's just look at the first 4 bars to this tune, okay? So we're playing a D major arpeggio for the first 2 bars of it, just ascending up 1 octave and then coming back down. So it's 1, 3, 5, 1, 5, 3, 1, 3. That's kind of how I think about it in my head. I'm just kind of tracing each of the arpeggio notes in terms of their relation to the root note of whatever chord we're playing over at that point in time. I know that can be a little confusing, but I think it really helps to think about music this way, because as you get faster with this process and you start to improvise your own solos over the chord changes to fiddle tunes, you'll be able to do this really quickly on the fly and just kind of have access to any of the chord tones that you want at any point in time for an improvised solo. It's kind of like a superpower, right? So we're building it from the ground up here. One great thing that you can do with this exercise, to kind of build upon it and take it to the next level, is to start making your own walking lines using the chord changes to Whiskey Before Breakfast here. So maybe instead of starting on a D note, you can start on an F sharp or an A, since those are other chord tones related to the D chord, right? And then that will kind of steer you through different paths of walking through these chord changes, and you'll find some really neat sounding things. This is an exercise that has endless possibilities, by the way, so don't let that overwhelm you. Just know that each time you practice it, if you're thinking about these chord tones as they relate to the chords, you're making progress and you're building and strengthening that muscle of improvisation inside your mind without even really realizing it. Another way that you could use this exercise is to just take any chord changes to any tunes that you happen to know and then walk these bass lines over top of the chord changes using the knowledge that you have here. Just use the triads for whatever those chords are. I do this almost daily in my practice, and will say that it has definitely supercharged my own ability to improvise over songs or even write my own kind of parts to songs. All right, my friend, I hope that you found this exercise helpful. Definitely spend some time with this one. The point of these 10-minute challenges is to just give you a bite-sized lesson that you can kind of sit with and maybe apply to other concepts as you move forward. So I hope you found some value in this one, and we'll see you in the next video.